welcome everyone. It's nice to see lots of names or faces that are joining us today. I'm Trisha Berry, the director of the Women in Engineering program, and this was an event that we had originally planned to do in person to celebrate the end of the year, to celebrate failures, make the most of the failures that we probably have all had over the course of the year. And given where we're at today, it's likely that there's going to be many failures along the way and many missteps that we all have as we continue to move forward and figure out how we're doing all of this work in our studies and everything that we're doing in the next few months. So thanks for joining in. We've got a variety of things that we're going to do today. We're going to, number one, use that chat box over there to share and to ask questions and to share your comments and thoughts. You can also, we'll have some time where you can unmute yourself to ask questions. We're going to share some stories. We're going to talk through some of the strategies, and you're going to hear from each of the Women in Engineering program staff. We have a couple of videos to show you, and then we'll wrap up showing you our YouTube channel where we have a playlist set that has all kinds of fabulous video resources for you to check out if you want to explore a little bit more about resilience and grit and overcoming failures and all those kinds of things. So with that, let's talk a little bit. I love this acronym, the way that this is framed. So FAIL stands for First Attempt in Learning. I think that a lot of times we feel like if we fail at something, that means that we're not good at it, or we're not cut out to be that, or do that type of activity. And really, we're never really good at anything until we try it and we practice it and we work at it and we learn. And so I think sometimes we forget that. And so I love that acronym. And then this quote from J.K. Rowling: "It's impossible to live without failing at something unless you've lived so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all." And so failing takes risk, right? So if we don't take some risks and don't try some things out, then, maybe we haven't lived our life to the fullest or done maybe all that we can. I liked both of those things to maybe start us out in our thinking about failure. We also know that failure can be frustrating. Any of y'all felt frustrated about failure along the way? I know in some of the videos that you're going to hear, you'll sense some of that frustration, and it can make us frustrated. It can make us angry. And sometimes when we feel like we try harder and harder, sometimes we just fail again, and that's part of the process. And we have to understand that that's part of the process, and that's part of the learning, and that we along the way can figure out different ways to do things, different ways to apply ourselves, and hopefully get out of that frustration cycle down the road. We also know that a lot of this is about grit. It's about, really sticking with it along the way, thinking about life as that marathon and not a sprint. And again, I think that's sometimes hard for us to think about when we're in the midst of it, right? We oftentimes think, gosh, I should be able to do this right now, not thinking about all the steps that it takes to be able to get to where we are. We want to be able to do it instantly and understand it instantly and be an expert instantly. And that's not really how it works. It works with that hard work, and it works with learning along the way, and definitely failing along the way. So all of this also relates to growth mindset, and you may have heard this in other spaces, but when you have a fixed mindset, that's that belief that you are just good at something or not, that you are just born able to do it, that it's super easy to everybody who's good at this to be able to do it. And really, again, that's not really how life works. It's really about learning. It's really about using those challenges that we have to understand better and to grow, and thinking about failure and our missteps along the way as those opportunities to grow. And we definitely know that within engineering, there's lots of failures along the way, and we need to have those failures in order to be able to be successful, or to be able to get those products out there that are working. We want the failures along the way. And we know that engineering design process, it just inherently includes failure, right? You all know this in the work that you do. You try things, you iterate, you figure it out, you try things again, and along the way, you're making it better and better. And if we don't embrace that failure as part of that process, we're not really doing the engineering design process justice. and we can apply this to our own personal lives as well. So I thought I would tell you a little bit about one of my failures. So I am a chemical engineering alum. I got my degree from UT Austin in 1993, and I went to work at Dow Chemical. And one of my early-ish projects that I worked on was making or trying to make biodegradable packaging peanuts with one of the byproducts that Dow had. The chemists had figured out that this byproduct that was being put into the waste stream and being burned was biodegradable. And so they started to think, how might we, number one, not burn this? And number two, of course, how might we make money with this? So I was charged with trying to figure out, how do we take this plastic, this biodegradable polymer, and put it into packaging peanuts? It was right when biodegradable packaging peanuts were starting to become a thing. It was in the early days of, it was probably even before Amazon, actually, so I'm quite old. but those packaging peanuts were everywhere, and they were styrofoamed for the most part, expanded polystyrene. And our polymer, I would go to different places, different manufacturing sites to test our plastic in the process. Dow didn't make packaging peanuts, but we wanted to see if we could sell that plastic into that market. I went and worked with customers, potential customers, and worked with trying to put our plastic into their process. It did not work. We burned up equipment. Our plastic got really hard when it got really hot. So it ran at different temperatures in the equipment that sometimes we were trying on. So it sometimes just locked up all of the equipment. And it was part of the process, right? We didn't know how it was going to work. Our customers value the relationship enough to have us come and try. We tried all kinds of things. I always said it was like cooking. We throw a little bit of this in, a little bit of that in. We try different temperatures, different pressures to see what would happen. And at the end of the day, our product was terrible. It did not work in this at all. Even when we made a good packaging peanut, biodegradable was probably questionable. The good ones on the market, if you throw it in water, it pretty much dissolves and it's gone. Ours would kind of melt and become a sticky, goopy glob that probably eventually biodegraded, but not right off the bat. So what I learned in that process was to, number one, not take it personally when maybe the manufacturing people were a little irritated that our product messed up their equipment, or making sure that I was documenting it along the way, so I knew what to not do next time. But it also helped me understand that it was part of the process. It was part of trying this whole thing out, and we spent a whole year on it before we finally were like, this is absolutely not going to work. Time and money well spent, but we're not moving forward. And they ended up finding that it would work well in a totally different application. And failure was part of it, and it was fun. It was crazy, but we learned a lot. And had we not done all of that failure along the way, we might have put a product out there that no one would buy, and that's not worth it. That's one of my little stories. I have lots of failure stories, but that's one of my little stories about that engineering design process at work. So I want to share a couple of videos that some of our fabulous volunteers helped us with. We have one from Riley Robertson, who's a third-year environmental engineering undergrad. And then we have one from Samya Siraj, who is on this call as well. She's a civil engineering alum. So let me shift over to our YouTube channel so that we can show you these videos.
My name is Riley. I'm a third-year environmental engineering major, and I'm just here to tell you that failure is okay. I failed at getting an internship 3 semesters in a row until I finally got one. I actually applied at the same company 2 different times after seeing them at Expo 3 times. And I got rejected the first time. They kept telling me to come back. They recognized me, and they finally hired me. There was only 2 interns at the whole office, so they just didn't have a lot of hiring capacity, which is why they weren't able to hire me the first time. So sometimes it's just an underlying reason and has nothing to do with you as a person. You just have to keep trying.
Hi Longhorns, hope you're all doing well. My name is Samia Siraj, and I graduated from UT with my PhD in civil engineering in 2014. Ever since then, I've been involved in the construction industry in Bangladesh, um, helping them to improve their safety and quality standards. And currently, I'm also working with a startup that helps STEM professionals improve their communication skills and other soft skills. So, thinking about past mistakes, one of the ones that has impacted me the most was right after my company won a very big award on quality management. We were taking out a press release and an ad that cost several $1,000s. And at the last minute, there was a change where one of the words that was achieve was supposed to be turned into receive. Since it was a last minute change, the graphical designer was very flustered. And in trying to help him, I said, "Hey, it's a really small change. Why don't you just change the ACH in achieve to REC to make it receive?" All the paperwork got signed, and the ad was released to all the major newspapers of the country. And at 1 a.m., I woke up wondering whether I had changed the IE in achieve to EI for receive. I did not. And it was a very embarrassing mistake because we were talking about our quality management systems, and in that ad, our quality control had failed. But I think it was a very important lesson for me because it taught me the importance of proofreading even after minor changes. And it actually led to a change in our company culture because the day after I saw my team members were trying to cover for me, and I said, "Listen, this is a mistake that anybody could make, so instead of trying to push it under the rug, we should talk about it even more so that no one else makes that same mistake." And that actually led to our company culture becoming a lot more open to discussing mistakes. And we have regular presentations, not only on the mistakes, but also how to put safeguards in place so that it doesn't happen again. Of course, as engineers, our mistakes can be very costly, and we should make all efforts to make sure that we are doing our work correctly. But mistakes do happen, and that's why it's so important to have cross checks in place, and security blankets. And it's also important to learn from our mistakes so that we can design a better future. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good session. Bye.
Okay. So, thank you to Riley and Samia for sharing their stories of failure. Failure is definitely a part of all of our processes. Now, I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the WEP staff because they have some things that they want to share with you as well. So, Anna is up first.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of my favorite quotes and some of my favorite lessons about failure. And I really think about failure as not really being failure. It's really about feedback. And feedback or failure is all about information that you've collected. So you collect that information. When you get information about something that doesn't work, it's an opportunity for you to grow because you can figure out new ways to do things. You've learned a way that doesn't work. And really, growth is a choice. Failure is inevitable. We're all going to fail. But what you choose to do with it and how you grow and learn from that is a choice that we should make. I also really love, so Trisha talked about the first attempt in learning. I really love the concept of not there yet, that we really aren't failing. We're just not quite there yet on whatever it is. And it's really okay not to meet every goal every day. And I think especially that's true right now when we're trying to be super productive and relearn how we do things. And it's okay to not be there 100% on everything every day. So those are my tidbits. I have lots of stories of failure, lots of things that didn't work out for me, but I'll spare you those and just leave you with my little bits of wisdom.
Thanks, Anna. Amy.
Figuring out that I was muted before I start talking is something that I continually fail at whenever I have Zoom meetings. So I want to talk a little bit about failing and switching careers and how that worked for me. So when I decided to switch careers and work in higher education, UT Austin was my ideal place of where I wanted to work. It took 6 months, about 20 applications, and 3 interviews before I was finally successful for a summer-only internship position. Not quite what I was looking for, though it was a start. I also had bills, student loans that needed to be paid. So I also knew that one of the reasons that I continued to get passed over was because of my lack of experience within the UT system. So I took the position. Towards the end of the summer, it was time for me to start applying again to full-time jobs. Those bills and student loans were still there, but I was really, really anxious and scared because what if this experience still isn't good enough? Did I really want to put myself through more rejection, more failure? I didn't, not at all. And yet there I went, submitting more applications and putting myself out there for it all over again. Now, while there was still one interview, the other one that I had, it wasn't. So that August of 2014, I CNS. And then about 2.5 years ago, I started here at Webb. I absolutely love what I do. I love the students that I've been able to interact with, and I'm inspired by them every single day. So I've thought about how was it that I was able to do that, make it here to this part of my journey, to have experienced that much failure, that much rejection, and still keep trying towards this goal of working here. Looking back, I realized that for me, it was simple. I knew that I wanted to work at UT, and especially with college students, with this whole grand idea of being able to make a difference in their lives, just like those who I interacted with during my time did for me. It kept me trying, it kept me overcoming, and it's actually what continues to keep me to do so even now as I move forward in my career. I know that those aren't the last or even the only failures that I'll ever have in this space, but this is what I'm really passionate about. So I'll keep trying and likely failing along the way, but I won't ever stop because it goes back to knowing that this is something that I am meant to do and that I am passionate about. And in one of the earlier slides, when we were talking about grit and how do you persevere and keep going and keep trying and pushing through some of these failures, when you have such a core value that you so strongly believe in, that can be your pillar to help you overcome that and to be open to experiencing a little bit more failure than you might be about something that you're so into. So that is something that I feel is a good little word of wisdom from me and my experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. And now we're going to turn it over to Andrea.
I'm learning from Amy because I too always talk when I'm muted. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Actually, before I share my story, we could go back to a couple of slides to where you talked the circle of failure, because that's one lesson that I think finally hit me when I was entering my career, similar to a lot of our, graduating. And this failure frustration cycle, I think, really captures some of our experiences with failure, but I think this is the content of like sometimes there being a mismatch. And what I mean is, right, when I was looking at jobs right out of college, it felt like all of my job applications and some of the rejections were a very personal experience, like I was not good enough. And one thing that over the last 10 years that I've been in the workforce particularly, and actually I think this expands also to like interpersonal relationships and dating, is like sometimes it's not so much a reflection of you, but it's also just a mismatch of where people are at, the employer's at, that other person's at, and what you're looking for, right? So like knowing that it's really important when you're feeling down on failure to consider like what you can control and what you can't, right? And what I can control is doing my best to perform at the best possible level that I know and with the content that I know. But sometimes I can't control what the other person or what the employer is looking at. And therefore, knowing that sometimes is a mismatch and it's not a reflection on my personal kind of ability or performance level. And I wanted to talk about that because the story I wanted to share is kind of like putting myself at this moment in time, but maybe 11 years ago when I was graduating from university, right? I had completed my career. My background is in political economy. And I was looking for all of these research opportunities in the big cities that would allow me to join a think tank. And similar to maybe what some of us are anticipating right now, we were just exiting like the recession, right? I graduated in 2009. So getting into positions was kind of really hard, particularly for an international student. So it meant that like the journey was long. And I decided that I could bridge me joining kind of like the real workforce by applying to a position on campus. If you don't know, a lot of universities utilize their housing facilities to welcome conferences on campus and make money and income for the university, right? So there was a big office that was managing all of this conferences on campus, and they were hiring students. Previously, all of my positions for working on campus had been really created by informal interviews. So when I set up myself to interview for this position, I did not really take it seriously. I thought it was like another on-campus job, boom, it's only for a summer, boom. I showed up and I wasn't really prepared, and they did not accept me for the position. But one thing that, my career center really like instilled in me, it's like, ask for feedback, right? So I followed up and like, hey, may I meet with you, please? I'd love to some feedback as to what happened, even though I was like, they don't deserve me because they didn't want me, right? That was my self-protection mechanisms then. And in my feedback, the director was like, it just showed that you were not prepared for the interview, didn't take it seriously. My number one advice to you is like interview for every position as if you were interviewed for like the top position in that organization, like show up wanting and well prepared. I'm like, okay. What that did for me is like, I really took it to heart, but it also created another level of communication between me and the director. Because as my school actually was downsizing in 2009 to manage the 2008 crisis, they let go of a person in a function, like the one that would print. It was a much smaller school than UT, but the one that prints the ID cards for students and things, and the conferences really relied on this function to work, right? So when the conferences team realized, like, hey, we need this, how are we gonna do? There was really not money put together to fund this position, but this director reached out to me and said, Andrea, listen, this position came up. I can't pay you, but I can provide housing and meals for you. And would you help us like fill this need for this summer? And I was just like, do I really want to take this unpaid position right out of the university when they've already rejected me? Like, this does not feel like a good relationship we're starting on. But this is something that I've carried with me since then. It's like, sometimes it's worth taking a chance and like leaving an opportunity open and a door open to see what evolves from this. So I was like, I hesitantly, also because I didn't get another position by this point, I hesitantly said, okay, I'll do it. And I was like, I felt shame. Like all of my other peers were like going into their careers, had positions, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll do this. I didn't want to share with a lot of people. And however, that opportunity turned out to be really phenomenal for me. I got to extend into campus for a little bit longer, got to see the campus during the summer, which I never had seen, which was beautiful. But also the director was able to see kind of the value I was adding for a position that had never been created. And they were able to start kind of compiling money among over the weeks to start paying me. And first it was partially, and by the end of the session it was full time. So it turned out to be a really good gig. It gave me a lot of office skills. I remember in that position, somebody taught me how to write emails professionally because I wasn't following protocol. But a lot of those things that maybe helped me and become even more prepared for my second, more professional and full-time position and long-term position that I had done. The thing for me is starting to learn that sometimes even though in this situation really I was rejected first because I didn't show up properly, my performance was definitely under the minimum. But recognizing as I was continued, they kept encouraging me to apply for more positions as I was getting ready to finish the summer with them. They fully supported me. And that's where I was able to learn, sometimes it's a mismatch, it's not a personal thing, but also as hard as sometimes feedback can be to hear, it's really helpful because that opens up a level of communication with those people. And then they know that you might be receptive to feedback and opportunities. And had I not followed up hesitantly again to request that feedback, I would never have gotten this position that allowed me to bridge into my full-time position in August. So that's my story from a few years ago.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. And that was a good reference back to our circle there. So I think what you heard from all of us and our video stories was really that engineering design process and work and operation, right, in our real lives. It's taking those things that we learn, it's taking those failures that we have, and it's iterating and trying and learning and trying again and trying to do our best throughout the whole process. But it's a never-ending cycle. We also know that, right? We're constantly learning and constantly growing. So with that, before we get to Q&A, so be thinking of your questions, and you can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can ask questions in the chat box. I want to go back and show you our playlist because there's more information that may be of interest to you all to see. So on our YouTube channel, YouTube.com/UTWEP, we have a playlist of celebrating failure. And there's the videos that we just shared. We're going to add the video of this event on here as well for others to be able to see. And then there's a number of our favorite videos on grit and on resilience and on celebrating failure that may be of interest to you. And I encourage you to check out the rest of that playlist at your leisure. I think they're inspiring and remind us that it's part of the process and that we're all here together in failure, celebrating and learning and growing is part of life. So I encourage you to check all of that out. So I'm going to throw it to y'all. We've got Samia on here who shared her story in a video. So she's WEP YouTube famous now. And we have all of our WEP staff and then all of you as well. Who wants to maybe share a failure that you have or a question that you have? And feel free to unmute yourself and do that, or throw it in the chat box. For Samia, if you have more words of wisdom to share, go for it.
I think for me with failure, one of the things that's hardest is the moment right after failure, because you're screaming at yourself thinking, how could you make such a stupid mistake, right? And I think what I've done is I have a little box filled with quotes from failure that I really like, and days when I have no one else to bounce off idea with, or I'm just running around in my own head, I open that box up and I read the quotes, and I think it helps me to calm down and say, okay, well, this mistake has been made. How do you move forward and fix it? And so then instead of thinking about, instead of focusing on the helpless part of the feeling, I think about, well, what can I change about it? I can't change the fact that I made a mistake, but I can certainly come up with a solution. So that's my way of dealing with that moment. Yeah.
I think that's great. And I think we have to remember, how do we take that step back, right? How do we catch ourselves when we're having those feelings, when we're feeling those frustrations? How do we recognize it and kind of step outside of ourselves, whether it's taking a walk, or whether it's having those quotes, or whether it's just completely stepping away for a little bit, or having that conversation with a friend or a coworker to get some of that perspective. And I think we get caught up in the moment and we forget to do that a lot.
Yeah.
Questions or thoughts from anybody else, or failures you want to celebrate and share? How many anticipate that you're going to have some failures along the way with all of this new learning environment and spaces? Look at all those hands. Yes. Sammy's turning on her video to share her hand. Yes. And, we saw it evident today with us not being able to get the microphones on, not being able to get the right screen up. We're all trying the best we can and trying to make it happen. And that's all we can do, right? Because we're all in it together. Okay. Any last questions or thoughts or words of wisdom that anyone wants to share? Yeah, Andrea.
Trying to switch between like the screen and anyways. I think one thing that doesn't come naturally to me, and that reflecting on failure has helped me really integrate into my reflection process, is empathy. And I think I'm experiencing a high level of empathy through these changes, right? It feels like people are open, whether in systems and processes, people are going to be like, okay, things are not going to go as smoothly. We'll get to some smooth level at some point. And that's really, really great to see happening on a widespread level. I feel like I'm seeing it in a lot of spaces in my life. But that is something that was really hard for me to kind of like work into my reflection process, because I am somebody that when I take myself to high performance, I expect others, and if they can't get there, I'm like judging on them. But I'm working harder and harder to bring empathy, particularly in my personal space, as I see other people struggling. I'm remembering like what it's felt like, similar to Samia's story of like that moment of like, yikes, something just happened, like remembering that moment as I see others and extending that hand for support. So I am hoping that this level of widespread empathy kind of continues and carries, because I think there's some really cool things happening right now that I hope our society keeps on, and just celebrate that it's kind of all over right now. But that is something that took me a while to feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, the concept of not there yet for yourself applies to others as well. And other people might not be there yet. And so to being a little bit gentle, not only with yourself, but when others fail, we tend to be really understanding when other people have failures, and we counsel them and we empathize and we, act like good friends and tell them, it's going to be okay. We have a hard time doing that with ourselves sometimes. But I really think keeping that in mind of not there yet, we're all on a journey, and being gentle with ourselves and others is a really important part of it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Samia.
Just jumping on what Anna said, one of my engineering mentors said something that really helped me early on in my career. He said that failures don't define you, and you are the sum total of all your actions. And I think sometimes when we do make a mistake, as Anna was saying, we're not gentle with ourselves, and we start to think that it's just that failure that's like our reflection. And so I think just, that's also like a great, mantra to like keep to yourself, that, that failures don't necessarily define you. So that's also helped me a lot.
Very true. Well, I think that's a fabulous lead-in to our failure certificate. So we've done this with our first-year interest groups in the past on their very first class day, knowing that during that first year in school, you're likely to fail at something in some way. And really, it's not just in your first year, it's every year of your life. There's some sort of failure that is happening. So we are giving everyone our certificate to screw up and to bomb and to not do well on a variety of things, especially as we try to figure out this new crazy that we are all living in. So you are still an utterly excellent human and engineer regardless. Thank you for joining in, with us, and thank you for, oh, do I not have it on? I still have it. Failure. Okay, it's beautiful. It's right here. Now can you see it? Oh, see, it's a failure to fail to give the failure certificate. So there you go. You all have permission to fail officially. We'll post this on social media so you can add it on yours and say, I now can fail at anything and everything these next few months and beyond. Thank you all for joining in on our first attempt at a virtual WEP event. If you have feedback, let us know, reach out to us. Let us know if there's other things that you would like to see from us or other ways you might like us to bring in people like Samya or alums to share their stories and experiences and words of wisdom. We have some opportunities to do things a little bit differently the next couple of months and do things virtually and bring in our fabulous alums and corporate partners. So let us know if you have ideas. We're happy to entertain those and go off and fail fabulously and fearlessly and be amazing. Thanks, y'all.